Mike, is Mike still here? Oh, there he is. Mike was born and raised in northern British Columbia, came to Ontario to get his engineering degree, and settled in Ottawa after finishing school. Mike is now 3 years retired, 3 years plus retired, and after 30 years in the local tech industry, Mike is a recreational cyclist and alpine skier, voracious reader, casual cottager, and amateur musician, and he just told me he's a bass player, which I also picked up 2 years ago, so we talked bass.
We'll have a bass duet at the next event. You can come out. It's really great hearing people. So I grew up in a small town in northern BC in the 1960s, 1970s, and back then everybody rode a bike, and in a small town, everybody rode a bike. It's how you got around, it's how you hung out with your friends. As we got older, some people stopped cycling. I kept going into high school. I remember lots of evenings riding down the highway to the next town on a nice evening, about 15K each way, just for the fun of it. And I think the summer after grade 11, a friend and I took our bikes on a train down to southern BC, and we did a week-long ride through the Okanagan Valley. Then I grew up, sort of, and moved away, did some traveling, went back to school, started a career, got married, all that stuff. Didn't really do a lot of cycling. In my 20s and 30s, I barely rode a bike at all. But then we had kids, 2 boys, and when they were old enough, we got them bicycles. The younger one didn't really take to it, but the older one did. And by the time he was in middle school, he was riding 8K each way to school and back, which was great. He got into his teens, we bought a couple of road bikes, had a lot of fun over several years, just exploring the local area paths and roads. But then he grew up and moved away, and I kind of cut back on my cycling, not having him to ride with, but I'd acquired quite a taste for physical activity and fitness. I was a regular at the gym at work, and I'd taken up running, and I'd become an avid outdoor skater and downhill skier, which explains the frozen nose today. If you'd asked me on, say, February 22nd, 2019, 6 weeks before my 58th birthday, I would have told you that I was fitter and healthier than I'd ever been in my life. February 23rd, 2019, I woke up from a colonoscopy to find my wife in tears and the doctor telling me that he'd found something. He was 99% sure it was cancer, and there was a 70% chance it was treatable. So we had some really stressful times waiting for scans and tests and results, but it turned out my cancer was in fact treatable. So the start of that was in the middle of April. I had 5 rounds of radiation. In late April, I had 10% of my large intestine surgically removed. As part of that surgery, I had something called an ileostomy, which you can Google if you have a strong stomach, but don't do it now because food sales will plummet. I had complications from my surgery. I spent 18 nights in the hospital, but I healed up, and it was time for the next step, which was chemotherapy. I think I had an easier time with chemo than most people I've known who've had cancer. I was actually able to go out on bike rides once in a while, up to 15, 20K, which was great. And when the snow came, I got out skiing several times. And those things made me feel a lot better physically, but they also reminded me why I was going through all this, why I was willing to go through all of it to stay alive, because these were things that made it worth being alive, getting out on my bike, getting out on my skis. I finished chemo in December of 2019, and a couple of months later, I had my ileostomy reversed. Again, don't Google it tonight. As far as we were concerned, our cancer story was over. But it was not, unfortunately. In October 2020, a CT scan showed spots on both my lungs, 1 on the left lung, 2 on the right lung. And a PET scan confirmed that they were cancerous. We were told this is not something they normally operate on. Metastases in both lungs, but the spots were small and isolated, and some lung capacity tests showed that my lungs were strong and healthy. I'll never forget the phone call with the surgeon when he told us that they were going to operate. Many, many medical professionals told me, you know, if you weren't so fit, we wouldn't be able to do this. And I attribute some of that to cycling, which is one of the reasons I'm here tonight. In early January 2021, and I remember the date very well because the next morning I woke up and looked at my phone and a bunch of crazy people were attacking the Capitol in the US. I had a small wedge removed from my upper right lung. In late March, 9 days before my 60th birthday, I had the entire lower lobe of my right lung, 20% of my lung capacity, surgically removed. And I was told at the time that my condition, stage 4 colorectal cancer with bilateral lung metastases, had a 5-year relative survival rate of under 15%, which meant that the odds of me living to 65 were great, or the odds of me dying before I was 65 were greater than 85%. I asked my oncologist if there was anything I could do about this. What can I do to make this stop, you know? She said, well, not much, but there's some evidence that if you eat well, keep your weight down, stay fit and active, that things might turn out a little better for you. So the first thing I did was retire. I decided if I was going to have only a few more years left, I was not going to spend them at a desk. That gave me a lot of spare time. One of the things I did with that time was start cooking a lot, and cook virtually everything we eat, including bread, pretty much from scratch. And it gave me a lot of time to exercise, and when there's no snow on the ground, that meant biking. Since my last lung surgery, I put 14,810 kilometers on my bicycle, just exploring the local roads and paths. Last spring, I joined the Canada and the Nepean Bicycle Club, and I learned to love group rides and stopping in little towns I've heard of but never visited and having lunch there with a bunch of strangers who turned out to be pretty cool people. Last year, I bought a new bike, one I can take off the pavement, and I had a great fall exploring the trails, the Prescott-Russell Trail, Cataraqui Trail, Trans-Canada Trail, looking at this city I've been living in for almost 40 years from a different perspective. It's really cool. So I'm an engineer by training and a bit of a control freak by nature, and I like to fix problems. And one of the worst things about cancer has been having a problem I can't fix. All I can do is show up, go to my appointments, endure whatever treatment I have to endure, follow instructions, etc. It just really killed any sense of agency I had over my own life. But even now, 4 years later, when I get on my bike, I think to myself, I'm riding away from cancer. And that is incredibly powerful and empowering. I get on my bike and I'm riding away from cancer. So 4 years after my last treatment, I'm still cancer-free. The last time I spoke to my oncologist, last October, she used a word I'd never heard her use before. She said, cure. She said, if you can maintain your current trajectory until March of 2026, I'll consider you cured. So my plan now is to just keep doing what I'm doing, keep living the way I've been living. All things going well, in the spring of 2026, I'll have my final appointment with my oncologist, and she will release me into the care of my family doctor. And at that appointment, I plan to tell her that I put 20,000 kilometers on my bike since my last treatment. And I hope to see some of you out there on the roads and paths and trails as I rack up those additional 5,190 kilometers. Thank you.